Hello, I'm Aude Bicquelet. I'm Deputy Head of Policy and Research at the RTPI, and I'm here to introduce our new research strategy, which will cover the next 2.5 years. As you probably know, the RTPI is a professional membership body, a charity, and a learned institute, which puts us in quite a unique position to understand the research needs of planners in the UK, in Ireland, and globally. As you also probably know, for more than a decade now, the RTPI has been promoting and celebrating planning research in many different ways, by commissioning and funding research projects, by supporting and promoting research conducted by academics within universities, and by acknowledging high quality and impactful research through our annual awards for research excellence. But I suppose before I continue, I should address two important questions, which are first, what's in our new research strategy? And second, why is this strategy different from our previous research work program? So to address those two questions in turn, our new research strategy is now published on our website. If you read it, you will see that it comprises 5 key objectives, which are first, to produce, promote, and fund research relevant to practitioners and policymakers. Second, to produce, promote, and fund research which has a positive impact on planning. Third, to promote the value of planning. Fourth, to improve planning practice. And fifth, to advance equality, diversity, and inclusion. Now, if I were to summarize these objectives, we could say that what really truly matters to us is to support research that addresses planning issues faced by practitioners, policymakers, and wider society. Now, of course, if we think about most recent events, such as COVID-19, for instance, or even the war in Ukraine, it is clear that planning research is important to help addressing critical contemporary questions around how to build healthy, resilient cities, for instance, in the wake of the pandemic, or how to deal with displaced populations in urban settings. And this is just in addition to other long-standing critical issues, if we think about, for instance, climate change, the housing crisis, or the decline of the high streets, which also call for crucial input from planning researchers. Now, to address the second part of the question which I raised earlier, how is this strategy different from our previous research work program? I think that it's important to underline that this strategy very much aims to advance knowledge across all sectors of planning to ensure that policymakers and practitioners have the information and expertise they need to deliver the best outcomes. And to discuss the best ways to promote planning knowledge across different sectors, I'm joined now by Janet Askew, who is visiting professor at Ulster University and former head of the Bristol School of Planning at UWE. Janet has worked and lectured in many universities across Europe, as well as lecturing in Taiwan and China. She is the president of the European Council of Spatial Planners and former president of the RTPI. She formerly chaired the RTPI International Committee and currently chairs the Policy, Practice and Research Committee. Now, Janet, could you tell us why it is important for planning research to be disseminated across different sectors, by which I mean academia, policymaking, and planning practice, and what is the best way to do it?
Thank you, Aude. Well, for a long time, actually, I've been concerned about the dissemination of research because considerable research is being done in our planning schools, often in cooperation with practitioners who are also publishing their research, but there does remain an implementation gap. So let me take healthy urban neighbourhoods as an example. There's been so much published about this, and to plan new neighbourhoods and retrofit existing areas is more important than ever to address post-COVID recovery and the health crises. And we know what a healthy neighbourhood looks like. We know how to plan it from strategic location right down to detailed design, but we're not putting that research into practice. Why not? I don't know. How can we bring this research to the attention of practitioners and politicians, of course? Well, I believe that the RTPI is key to this in 3 ways. So first, through establishing strategic partnerships and enhancing our status as a learned society, we can make research accessible or more accessible to our members. This will enable them to demonstrate to communities and government, central and local, the evidence base for policy making. Second, the RTPI must advocate for higher funding for planning research This means strengthening the relationship between the RTPI and our accredited planning schools, and working with them to identify sources of funding. And third, the RTPI also has a role in influencing the research agenda. We have considerable experience. We can draw upon our extensive relationship with thousands of UK and international planners, and we have a huge base of members from whom we can learn about the pressing issues which need to be researched. And I think that our members are our biggest asset, and together we can work together to bridge the gap between research and the planning of urban areas, so urban and rural areas. So I very much welcome the initiatives and ideas in our new research strategy, and I'm confident that we will develop new ways maybe of conducting and disseminating research over the next few years.
Thank you very much, Janet. As you mentioned, one of the key aspects of our research strategy is to bridge the gap between planning policy, research and practice. And to this end, research dissemination is absolutely crucial. I'm now joined by Professor Mark Scott, who is Dean of Architecture, Planning and Environmental Policy at UCD, University College Dublin. Mark is also one of the editors of the academic journal Planning Theory and Practice. Mark, a very important part of excellent research on planning is conducted by academics within universities, despite important challenges faced by academic researchers. Because not everyone is aware of those challenges and the context of planning research within universities, could you please describe some of the problems encountered by researchers working within university departments?
Thanks, Aude. I think Janet has mentioned some of these already. I think funding is really a critical challenge, and having opportunities for really planning-focused research, planning-specific research, I think is really important for the profession, but also for building the capacity of RTPI accredited planning schools as well. I think this is a two-way conversation. Planning schools can also help build the capacity of the profession through enhancing the evidence base for decision making and policy making as well. I think another challenge facing us as planning researchers is ensuring that our research has impact. So how we can engage with the end users of the research is really important. As Janet mentioned, to bridge that gap between research and academic research and policymakers and practitioners. So, having the RTPI there to help communicate and disseminate research, I think is really critical to the conversation.
Thank you. And how can the RTPI address some of those challenges?
Well, I think it's critical for the RTPI to be central to the research landscape and to be really central part of the research ecosystem, from its role to funding research right through to dissemination. So I think significantly the RTPI can play a role in bridging that research community on one hand and practitioners and policymakers on the other. So part of that is about funding excellent research, and as Janet said, also about directing some of that conversations about what research should be the sort of future focus of planning schools as well. I think supporting early career researchers is important. So the RTPI has a role in supporting the next generation of planning researchers. And I think also recognising and promoting research excellence is a really important role of the Institute. And I think that the recent research awards has been a really critical initiative from the RTPI. Disseminating, communicating research is also a really important part of the research landscape. So the RTPI's library series with Routledge is really important in publishing leading edge planning research, both UK and internationally as well. And also the journal that I'm involved with, Planning Theory and Practice, which is part owned by the RTPI, really seeks to bridge that gap between research and practice. So how we can inform practice and how research should also be addressing those really important issues that face planning practitioners as well. So the RTPI really is there to support, I think, promoting and disseminating research and engaging a conversation between policymakers and researchers.
Thank you very much. Finally, a last question to you both, Janet and Mark. You may have noticed that unlike our previous research program, our new research strategy does not include a list of topics or themes that we intend to commission or fund for the next 2.5 years. This is because we don't want to be too prescriptive. As you know, priorities in planning are constantly shifting. And so we want to adopt a bottom-up approach, so to speak, whereby researchers can come up with their own research questions, with their own research designs, and then for us to determine which project we could fund or promote via our networks. Now, regardless of what I've just said, and to end this video, I would very much like to know which research topics you think will be prominent or important to address in the next few years, starting with Janet.
Thank you. The climate crisis is constantly throwing up new areas to research, and in particular, for me anyway, and I think for planners, the relationship between climate and social justice is not so well researched as the economic and environmental impacts of climate change. Therefore, I think it's important that we research the best ways to promote social sustainability, and especially now when the divisions in society are immense and poverty is growing all the time. I agree with you, Aude, that the housing crisis is one of society's biggest challenges, but this is mostly and most importantly an affordable housing crisis. And linked to this is the elimination of poverty, which of course is the main objective of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. And planners have a big role in demonstrating these links and defining how we can help. The second thing I'd like to say is that the research agenda is changing all the time. And two examples from today illustrate what I mean. Migration and its humanitarian consequences, and recovery from the pandemic. So 3 years ago, we didn't foresee the extent of these problems. And this, of course, is these are UK and international problems. So in my interest and former role really as the chair of the International Committee of the RTPI, I really think that the RTPI must work with planners internationally to show how we are all responsive and flexible in our approach to the urgent needs of society. Thanks.
Thanks, Janet. Mark?
Well, I agree with Janet again. I think the idea of having an agile research strategy is really important because we're always coming up against unforeseen challenges. But I think it's hard. I think research that connects planning with the critical global challenges, I think, are really essential. And ensuring that planners, planning practitioners, and policymakers are equipped with the very best evidence to inform practice and to actually affect change on the ground. While also, I think, as researchers, trying to provide the evidence, the planners have the know-how and the tools to address some of these global challenges as well. So climate change, I think, has to be at the top of the agenda. Along with that, just transitions is absolutely central. But also the biodiversity crisis is something we're seeing a lot more planning focus on around biodiversity gain, for example, in relation to development. Energy security is just going to be at the top of everybody's agenda over the next few years. Other issues around planning, health and well-being, which Janet has already mentioned. I think we've all sort of felt that after coming through a pandemic, that we think about the quality of the places where we live and how that relates to our health and well-being. Related to that, another one of these global challenges is going to be as we become an older society. So thinking about the role of planning in relation to age-friendly places, I think, is going to be an important part of all our agendas moving forward. And I think, again, Janet's alluded to this in relation to poverty, but addressing the challenges of the so-called places left behind, I think, is going to be very high on every political agenda as well. As well as those themes, I think it's important for research to reflect on how planning is performing in relation to those debates as well. So, what is the purpose of planning? What is the value of planning? How is planning resourcing affecting our ability to deliver on the potential of planning as well? And trying to understand the changing face of the profession, I think, is a challenge for us as researchers as well.
Well, thank you very much, Janet and Mark, for joining me today for the launch of the RTPI's new research strategy. And thank you to everyone watching. Also, thank you to everyone who participated in our research consultation process last year, which has heavily influenced the final strategy. I look forward to working with colleagues, RTPI members, and other organizations and institutions over the next couple of years to achieve the strategy vision and objectives. If you have any questions about the strategy, then please email them to research@rtpi.org.uk. Goodbye for now.